Well, it actually, as a concept, has a very long history. Most people would say the origin of the Quad was in the aftermath of the massive tsunami that struck the Indian Ocean in December 2004 on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, which wiped out coastal communities and islands from India and Sri Lanka to Thailand. And and particularly Indonesia. And I was in the White House at the time as the senior director responsible for Asia, and was there when we worked with India, Japan, Australia to create a quadrilateral task force, primarily centered on the U.S. 7th Fleet, which happened to be steaming in the region at the time, but with Japanese, Australian, and Indian elements to provide emergency relief that no one else could provide. And it was decided very quickly, and it was able to save probably thousands of people from the effects of the tsunami because other relief efforts couldn't get to them through all the damage. And then it was an open architecture so that the stricken countries themselves, Thailand, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, of course, participated, but so did Singapore, New Zealand, Canada, and eventually even China sent some small relief hospital teams to help in Indonesia. So it was a effort by the four big maritime democracies to respond to a crisis and provide public goods. And that's where this all came from. But the concept is actually very old and very geopolitical. In the 1850s, Commodore Matthew Perry, after returning from opening Japan to the world with his famous black ships, gave speeches in New York City just before the American Civil War, in which he said, someday the Pacific, this critical maritime domain, will be protected by the Cross of St. George, the Stars and Stripes of the United States, and Japan, this new power. And of course, India and Australia today represent, in effect, the inheritors of that British tradition. And then Alfred Thayer Mahan, the very influential and famous American strategist at the end of the 19th century, again said there should be a Quad to preserve the security of the Pacific. And he mentioned Britain, Japan, the US, and Germany, which was a new imperial power and not yet our enemy. So the idea of working with other maritime powers, particularly like-minded ones, to maintain an open Indo-Pacific order goes back, 150 years in American thinking and in British and Australian thinking. And it is now back as, in many respects, the most important feature of the Biden administration and before that Trump administration's approach to the region.